So can we say that Yokai Watch blew up in America, or would that be an understatement? It felt unnatural how this strange little game from Japan somehow blew up in America. I thought it was just like a little niche thing that only people like me would enjoy, but I guess it's good to see these people liking it. And along with a bunch of other spin-off games that no one cares about, there's a sequel in Japan. And of course, with finding popularity in America, Level 5 had two options: milking it in America or milking it in America. And of course they chose the former option, and they brought over the second game to America. Everyone and their grandmother knows that the duty of a sequel is to add more to the game while fixing the issues that the first game had. Unfortunately, as news began to spread about this game being released here, there was something I had a little bit of a negative opinion on immediately. First off, the game was separated into two versions: Bony Spirits and Fleshy Souls. Through each of these versions there would be some minor differences in the story, and I mean it whenever I say minor, as well as some exclusive yokai in each version. That sounds oddly similar to another series, but it wouldn't be copying it, would it? I know Level 5's starting some stupid rivalry with Pokemon, but you can't rival someone by copying them. That just comes off as pathetic. And two, yes, I do like the Yokai Watch series, but there's no way in a million years that it would ever be able to compare to Pokemon. I don't like starting games with a negative outlook, but I'm more than certain that this game would give me a good experience. Once again, in the town of Springdale, which, don't fret, it's still fiction, these two Dumbo McGees are searching for the Yokai Watch to get rid of it for some reason, and they just kind of look at it funny and it disappears. Also, might I add that these two have some of the most unbearable voices I've ever heard in a video game. But with the removal of the watch, Nate also loses all of his memories involving yokai. So we get to see Nate's life without yokai. And let me tell ya, it's pretty boring. So Nate and his family just go on a, fun little shopping trip. And it goes on for a little longer than I would have liked it to, but whatever. They stop by a good old donut store. But, oh no! There's two donut stores, and each of them have some different specialties or whatever. And Nate's parents, alongside some bystanders, just start getting into an argument over something really stupid. I mean, come on, people. Arguing over some dumb donuts? That's kind of silly, don't you think? But even after more stuff, this intro is longer than the one in the first game. Holy crap. We finally get to a memory store. I like how this place is designed, although this creepy guy's running it, but he lets us have a yokai watch. I wonder where this is going. Nate also uses the Crank-a-kai outside where Whisper pops out, and after both of them come in contact with each other again, they both regain their memories. They even go to find Jibanyan again, who sure enough is fighting trucks like he was whenever you first meet him in the first game. So now that the gang and Jibanyan are all back together, they don't question what happened. And also, I feel the need to mention that Jibanyan is now one of the main characters. He'll often speak in the middle of these cutscenes alongside Whisper and Nate. To be honest, later on he acts a little bit annoying and kind of selfish, like he's not actually friends with these two. That's seen almost immediately whenever they try to go back to the memory store, but it's missing. And then they run into another yokai known as Brashido who wants to fight them. However, Jibanyan will only fight if he's given a choco bar. And unfortunately, that's not the only instance of Jibanyan being annoying. So now that Nate no longer has any medals, all we have is Brashido and Jibanyan. Fortunately though, we can use the gumball machine on Mount Wildwood to get us another yokai, and we're even given a coin that allows us to choose from a set selection of yokai. Hey, wait a second. Given an option of 3 different yokai to accompany you? Well, guess what? If you thought this was going to be anything like Pokemon, then you couldn't be any farther away from the truth. In Pokemon, your starter Pokemon held some sort of sentimental value. You really did care about them, even if they probably weren't the best member on your team. They're the first Pokemon on your journey, and they do hold up pretty well throughout the game. Unfortunately, I can't feel the same way about Yokai Watch's way of implementing this because of two things. For one, all of the yokai that are currently currently here are just kind of mediocre. I replaced them almost immediately. But something that makes me even more upset is that these yokai were regularly available in the first game. But for some reason in this game, this is the only opportunity that you have to get them. Oh, and if you own the first game, then you can get Butinyan here. It's a mixture of Whisper and Jibanyan. How come they're allowed to fuse, but you can't fuse the Rough-Raft you can get from the Crank-a-kai with Jibanyan? They could fuse in the first game. What gives? Oh, and also we get introduced to quite possibly one of the worst additions in the game, Key Quest. Every now and then, your progress will be halted by this roadblock called Key Quests. The game will politely request of you to do some side quests. And let me tell you that most of these quests range from stupid to stupid. Also, aren't these called side quests? You know, stuff you can put on the side and do another time, or not do at all, or whatever. How is it a side quest if it's required? And I cannot tell you how many times this just comes up and it's just an abrupt killjoy. In all honesty, I think that they're worse than the watch stores. Oh, don't fret, they didn't remove those, so that's good. So far, the game is messing up at every turn. I just hope that the main story is fun at least. It really isn't. Nothing spells fun like Nate's good friend Eddie losing his watch and just walking from place to place. Don't worry though, you become friends with this guy. His name's Swoten. He's a yokai. He's also a very fat, sweaty old man. What an incredibly creative yokai. I gotta give the game credit for one thing, though. The first boss is pretty good. It's this giant skeleton dude called Gutsy Bones. He's at the very top of the skull, there for some reason, and he plays with this, though, mini Crank-a-kai. It's a fairly entertaining battle, and it teaches you some good stuff about the boss battles later on. However, his attack animations are way too long. That, and why are we beating him up to begin with? He was just kind of looking spooky, that's it. After all that stupidity, we get attacked by a monster that I can only assume came from DeviantArt. Actually, no, it's just a regular yokai. He's telling us to go to another town called Harrisville. And thankfully, Nate's grandmother lives there, so we have an excuse to go there now. So let's go there by train. This should just be a quick cutscene and game? What are you doing? Oh no, we're gonna have to sit through like a bunch of different stuff. Okay, how many more stations do we have to go past? Oh my goodness. This is probably the most unnecessary addition to the entire game. Train station. They expanded the overworld a little bit to add in some new areas and stuff, but guess what? There are only 3 towns in the game. So you see all these stations here? They've got nothing for you besides some stuff for quests. That's it. It took about roughly 20 minutes just to get to Harrisville because all you do is you sit around, some of the characters talk, maybe you fight a yokai or two. Who thought this was fun? Oh, and speaking of which, you have to walk around the town with Grandma. How fun. Now, while you're here, you actually get introduced to a few things. First, you meet up with Patty-Soul, who's apparently a super popular yokai, as well as introduced to the 2 factions of yokai, the Fleshies and the Bonies. These 2 hate each other for some reason. But after some incredibly fun key quests, we remember why we're here and we meet up with that yokai we saw earlier. And after reverting back to his normal state, he's revealed to be Hovernyan, a yokai that can travel through time. Now, why do we need to come back here? Well, because of yokai experiment going out of control in the past. As we can see by this completely normal man. Well, actually, he's being inspirited by what's called a wicked yokai. Remember the yokai that McCracken had control over in the first game? Yeah, these are basically more fleshed out versions of that concept. Unfortunately, with the watch we currently have, we can't actually see it. But don't worry, Hovernyan's friend Nathaniel pops in at just the right second. However, Nathaniel isn't just some random kid. He's actually Nate's grandfather, and he's stubborn, childish, and kinda stupid. The only thing I can really give him credit for is that he was the original creator of the Yokai Watch. Now, at the time period that we're currently at, the Yokai Watch hasn't been created yet. So you know what that means? More key quests! Do you see how tiresome the key quests have become? Like, sure, this time you go to Springdale in the past, and it is kind of cool looking. I actually do like exploring Old Springdale, since there are next to no loading screens in this area. However, I don't like having to do more key quests. The only thing of note here is that you get to see one of the generals of either the bony spirits or fleshy souls, depending on which version you're playing. But it's not really intimidating or anything. He just comes out of nowhere. We do the work for him. So before we continue any further, I just want to go ahead and apologize for how differently this video is structured compared to the previous one. As you can tell, I've been focusing mainly on some of the story elements as well as the nitty-gritty stuff, while in the previous video I managed to get down to just talk about regular gameplay elements really quickly. But that comes down to how the game is structured. Something cool about the first game was how every scenario was kind of like an episode of a TV show. Here though, it's just one main story, and that's it. It's not even a very entertaining one. And that's especially shown with this next scenario. Oh, this has gotta be the worst segment in the game overall. Okay, so we just got the Yokai Watch parts from Springdale, and we gave them Nathaniel, so he's finished up that Yokai Watch, and it's an older model. That means it has new abilities. We'll talk about the Yokai Watch in just a second, but Haruyan actually requests of us to recruit some of Nathaniel's old yokai friends. All 5 of them are currently under a curse that has turned them into stone. Fortunately, Whisper expresses his inner Batman and pulls something right out of his butt that completely solves the problem. And you know what that means? More key quests! Even though we literally just did some key quests earlier. And unfortunately, since we're doing this in the present, and each of the yokai are on a different part of the overworld, we have to take the dreaded transit system. This part is long, it's tedious, and it encompasses all of the things I dislike about this game. It tells you, go here, go here, go here. It involves key quests. 3 out of 5 of the yokai here can't evolve until the post-game or can't evolve at all. They all involve the transit system. And it has the worst use of the baffle boards in this game. Obtaining Mermaiden is the worst out of all of them. You have to go all the way to San Fantastico, which is only used for this one part. So you take a long train ride there, you go to where she- oh, guess what? There's a door. I guess you gotta go get my watch upgraded. Alright, now we're in the cave, so we just have to recruit some of the yokai to activate these baffle boards. Yeah, baffle boards. You guess what yokai that they're telling you about, then you recruit that yokai and use it, and it'll have effect on the area. It's a pretty cool idea, but this is the worst usage of it by far, because there are 3 baffle boards in this one area, and they're all required to reach the end. And yes, even after all that, there's a boss in this area. It's not a terrible boss, which is good by this game's standards, since this game has bosses that are just much worse than the first game. They're either downright bad, or I just don't think that they're very memorable. And then, Ken and Gin from the beginning of the game decide to finally take matters into their own hands and try and take you down. And their boss fight is awful. First off, there are 2 different bosses, so that means that they're going to pummel you like crazy, and they have 2 separate HP bars. But whenever you knock down one of them, they use their time powers to try and revive the other. I was stuck on this boss for about a week, because I didn't know that you could shoot a pin at the stone to prevent them from reviving each other. How was I supposed to know that? That's not even how I defeated them. I ended up whittling their HP down so much I was able to take both of them out at once with this ultimate. But after this, the game sets the story aside for just a little while. And this would be a perfect opportunity for me to talk about the new stuff that they added to the gameplay. If there was new stuff that I could talk about. I've already mentioned the baffle boards, and the key quests are practically a running gag in this video. So one of the last things for me to talk about is the Model Zero watch. But even then, what is there to say about this? There are 2 extra actions with this watch. You can use a Moxie skill, which if 3 of your yokai have their Soultiments fully charged and they're all adjacent to each other, then you can use a more powerful version of the Soultimate. However, I don't use this very much because either 2 to 3 yokai on the front of the battlefield are just charging their Soultimate. And when they're charging their Soultimate, then they can't attack, so that means that their turn gets skipped, which means that the enemy gets extra turns to fight them. And by the time you're almost done charging up the Moxie skill, one of the yokai involved with it is probably going to die. Then there's all about this game being version exclusive and stuff. Honestly, there is very little to this. All there is exclusive yokai, and that's about it. I don't even think that highly of some of the exclusive yokai. On that topic though, the new yokai are kind of a mixed bag. There are some that I really don't care about, but the ones I do like quite a bit, such as Flame Rice, Lionheart, Scarasol, and my personal favorite yokai, Vacuumori. There are a few others I can name off, but once again, just a mixed bag for me. Well, I don't know about you, but I'm thinking about going on to the finale of this game. Any objections? What do you think, Nathaniel?
Let's go!
Autism has become an epidemic.
Well, just like many other things, I don't care. It appears that the bony spirits of fleshy souls are preparing for a big battle, and sure enough, you have to end up siding with one of them. Depending on the version you're playing, depends on which boss you fight, but really it doesn't make much of a difference. After defeating Arachnus and fleshy souls, or Total Dude and bony spirits, they tell you why they've been fighting. I remember in the beginning how Nate's parents were having a public argument over donuts? Well, guess what? These two yokai split up and had a big war separating all yokai. They were requested to get a present for their master. They decided on donuts. And all of these yokai split up into two sides because they couldn't agree on what type of filling to get in it. But they decide to make up whenever the wicked yokai come back and their leader is brought with them. And apparently this one wicked yokai known as Unfairy is enough for us to have to retreat and get some training. And then we just so happen to find this master yokai known as Master Nyata. And he has us do a key quest. The trials don't even involve that much fighting. They mostly just involve dumb quest stuff. And I guess now that I have 2 more level ups in my party, and that we have this pose, we can finally take on Unfairy. However, we're a little bit on the late side, and Dame Dead Time shows us the Dead Cloud that she has created. The Dead Cloud is able to inspirit all of the humans there if it gets powerful enough. Then we're sent to the present for a very brief amount of time just to see what the future will look like. And yep, everyone's screwed, we gotta get rid of that Dead Cloud. Oh, but there's one thing I want to mention here. There's a battle board here that you have to use with Miradox to get back to the path. Miradox was a yokai that was retrieved much earlier on in the game just to travel back and forth through time. However, what happens if you toss Miradox's medal? Are you stuck in the present forever, unable to escape? Sure, I'm getting distracted. After we clear out a few more wicked elite yokai, it's time to head down to the manufacturing center at the end of town. This is where Dame Dead Time has set up shop, and it's now time to fight her, and this fight kinda sucks. Dame Dead Time has some typical elemental attacks, blah blah blah, I don't care. Her special trait is that she has an attack where she can steal your yokai's level and then transform it into an enemy. This is very annoying, because that means that your yokai's level gets temporarily reverted back to level 1. Meaning that they're not strong enough to attack the other yokai. So obviously, you want to get rid of the enemy so that she won't have an ally, and so you can get your level back. Okay, we got the level back. Oh my gosh, she's doing it again! After you get her down to half HP, she uses what might just be my favorite ultimate in the game. Action Replay! Oh wait a second, that's a scripted sequence. Kin and Gin are keeping her alive through their time-altering powers, and there's a heartfelt scene here that actually kinda works, where Nathaniel manages to summon all of his yokai for it, and alongside some triumphant music which I couldn't find for the life of me. This fight against him is a little more enjoyable, but that's just because your yokai are at a set level. And just in case if you're wondering, no, I still didn't know that you could get rid of the time stones. Then you have an actual battle with Dame Dead Time, and after you beat her, she's kinda like, well, I'm gonna take some stuff away from these people. And remember how McCracken's second battle was like one of my favorite final bosses ever? This is quite the opposite. I could rant, I could scream, I could yell, but I can just say I don't like this boss, nor do I want to talk about it that much. I think you know what type of countdown this boss is going to end up on, but just to give you a few examples of how terribly designed this boss is, let me go through some of its attacks. She can interrupt one of your yokai's turns and steal their attack and then use it on you. She can prevent you from using items for a very long time, which could possibly screw you over. And one of the most terribly executed attacks I've ever seen in my entire life, Ultimate Steal. I have no idea when or how this activates, what circumstances are meant to be met, but sometimes she does it, sometimes she does. But whatever, I just don't use ultimates at all, which kind of lowers the fun factor of this fight. I know that Dame Dead Time's whole character is taking stuff from others, you know, like taking joy or whatever, but guess what? You shouldn't actually have that sort of effect on me. You shouldn't take away my fun. Yeah, after we're done with that, I want to get the frick out if you bring me back to the present. This place is horrifying. I don't know what else I could say. I'm pretty sure everyone on the dev team had some good intentions, but ugh. Sometimes it was bad concepts, sometimes it was bad executions. All I know is I didn't really have a whole lot of fun with the main story in this game. And that's a real shame considering how good the last game was. and also how good the post-game content in this game is. Unfortunately, I've run out of time to talk about the post-game stuff. 20 minutes is a little bit long, don't you think? I guess I unfortunately won't ever have the excuse to talk about it. Hey Psychic Spectres, what are you doing here? Right, they released the expanded version of Yokai Watch 2. I guess we're not quite done with the Yokai Watch marathon-esque thing yet. Whatever. Psychic Spectres probably won't be too long. And thankfully, I can talk about purely gameplay stuff this time around. Well, see you next time, people.
It's squat time! Hips down, knees bent, let's go! 1, 2,